My name is Arianelle Pierce, and I turned 69 this April. I have lived alone for nearly 25 years in a small house near the Charleston Harbor, a place that still smells faintly of salt and jasmine after sunset. People say I'm patient to a fault, but what they really mean is that I've spent too much of my life waiting for someone to need me, to call, to remember. That morning, I woke early. The habit of an old seamstress who used to measure her days by fabric and thread. I decided to bake my own birthday cake. The same dark chocolate cherry recipe my grandmother once swore could mend a broken heart. I stirred the batter slowly, careful not to rush the rhythm. Baking was the one tradition Leora and I still shared, or so I thought. By late afternoon, the cake cooled on its stand, rich and glossy under the light. I spread the green embroidered tablecloth my mother had made long ago, the one with tiny ivory flowers stitched into the corners. 2 porcelain plates sat side by side, napkins folded perfectly, waiting for Leora and her husband, Bastian. I had even bought pearl-colored candles from the boutique downtown, 3 times more expensive than ordinary ones. But their glow was softer, gentler, like forgiveness. When the clock reached 6, I sent a small text. The cake's ready. Come hungry. No reply. At 7, I tried to convince myself they were simply running late. I set the kettle on the stove, straightened the silverware for the 3rd time, and adjusted the curtains so I could see the driveway. Then my phone buzzed. Mom, we're at the harbor room, can't cancel last minute. Save us a slice. I read it twice, the words blurring for a moment before settling into my chest. The Harbor Room was the city's new luxury restaurant, where champagne cost more than my monthly grocery bill. I stood very still. The hum of the refrigerator the only sound in the house. I lit the candles anyway. 70 small flames trembling in the quiet, their light spilling over the frosting like tiny apologies. I sang softly to myself just the first line and blew them out. No wish, no laughter, only smoke curling upward, graceful and indifferent. I sat for a while longer, listening to the distant gulls and the echo of music drifting from the harbor. Then I picked up a pen from the counter, tore a page from my notebook, and began to write. My hand did not shake. The words came easily, calm and clear. When the ink dried, I folded the note and slid it beneath the cake plate. Then I turned off the lights, locked the door, and left the house as it was table set, candles half melted, air heavy with sugar and silence. Later that night, when my daughter finally came home, the cake was waiting. So was the note. And whatever warmth had once filled that house would never be quite the same again. Morning light slipped through the kitchen curtains, thin and pale. The cake was still on the table. The frosting dulled overnight. I stood there barefoot, holding my coffee, and watched a line of sugar ants make their way toward it, tiny and determined. I didn't stop them. I had turned 69 yesterday, but the number felt distant, like it belonged to someone else. I thought of the years stacked behind me, each one marked by the sound of a sewing machine, the smell of fabric, and a promise to keep everything together after Richard died. I was 43 then. The morning of his heart attack had been warm, like every Charleston spring morning, but the air afterward never felt the same. I built this house on what little insurance was left. Working nights, hemming uniforms for dock workers, and bridesmaid dresses for women who forgot to thank me. I did it so Leora could finish school, so she wouldn't feel the gap her father's death left behind. Every stitch I made carried her name. By the time she was 10, she loved watching me sew. She'd sit cross-legged by the table, playing with my spools of thread. "You'll teach me when I'm older," she'd say. Of course, I always answered, but when she did grow older, she had no patience for the hum of old machines. She wanted light, movement, newness. "You live too quietly, Mom," she used to say. After she left for college, I kept sewing. Not for money anymore, but for rhythm. The sound filled the hours when the house went silent. I'd make curtains, pillowcases, and birthday dresses for her. Every year she came home, we'd cut the cake together, no matter how busy she was. Until 3 years ago, that was when she married Bastian Kane, a man with polished shoes and perfect timing. He was kind enough at first, always calling me Mrs. Pierce, always smiling too wide. Lyora's voice changed when she spoke around him. Softer, careful. She had started using words like investment and networking dinners. The first birthday after their wedding, they came late. The next, they sent a message. This year, they didn't come at all. I moved the cake to the counter and sat down. The chair creaked under me, familiar and forgiving. The phone buzzed on the table. Lyora's name lit the screen. For a moment, I thought she'd read the note and wanted to talk, but it was a voice message. I pressed play. Mom, sorry about last night. We didn't get home until almost midnight. You didn't have to leave the lights off like that. It scared Bastian. Anyway, I hope the cake's still good. We'll stop by tonight for a slice. Her voice was brisk, unbothered, as if she were asking about leftovers. I deleted the message and poured the rest of my coffee down the sink. The note I had left under the cake had said only 8 words. Enjoy your evening. The cake is yours, I'm not. I hadn't meant it to be cruel, just final, outside. A neighbor's dog barked, and the gulls began circling the harbor. The day stretched open before me, empty yet strangely light. I turned off the kitchen light, took my keys, and stepped outside. The air was soft, carrying the scent of the sea and distant magnolias. I wasn't sure where I was going, only that I couldn't keep standing in the same kitchen where 70 springs had passed, and only one had finally changed me. By noon, the house smelled faintly of sugar and silence. I sat at the kitchen table, scrolling through my phone only because I didn't know what else to do with my hands. That was when I saw it, Lyora's post from the night before, a photo taken at the harbor room. She was in a red dress, smiling under the chandelier, one hand resting on Bastian's arm. 2 glasses of champagne sparkled in front of them. The caption read, "Perfect night with my favorite person." I stared at the words until they blurred. Beneath the post, friends commented hearts and fire emojis, calling her glowing and in her element. My daughter had been glowing. Yes, just not anywhere near me. The humiliation was small at first, a pinch in my chest. Then it spread, heavy and slow. I put down the phone and looked at the cake still sitting on the counter. The frosting had cracked overnight, cherries sinking into the softness. It looked like something that had tried too hard to stay beautiful. I wiped the counter, though it didn't need cleaning. The sound of the cloth moving over the tile steadied me. I'd spent my life cleaning up after love. The phone rang again. Lyora, this time calling instead of texting. I let it ring once, twice, 3 times before answering. "Hi, Mom," she said, cheerful, as if nothing had happened. "We stopped by last night, but you weren't home. Everything okay?" "I went for a drive," I said. "You were still out." "Oh, yeah. Dinner went late. You know how Bastian gets, he ordered a second bottle." She laughed lightly. I could hear music behind her, the murmur of dishes. "You sound busy," I said. "Just cleaning up," she replied. "Anyway, I saw your note. You didn't have to be dramatic." My grip tightened around the phone. "That wasn't drama. That was honesty." She exhaled sharply. "Mom, it's just a dinner. You know I love you. We'll come by tonight for cake. All right." "No," I said. The word surprised both of us. "No. Lyora, the cake's not the point." A pause. Then her voice. Clipped. "Then what is the point that I waited?" I said. "And I realized you stopped waiting a long time ago." She went quiet. Then said softly, "You're taking this too personally. It was personal, Mom, please. You're acting like..." "Like what?" Like the world still revolves around you. Her words landed hard. Each one colder than the last. I closed my eyes. It used to revolve around family, I said. There was a soft click, and the line went dead. For a long moment, I sat in the hush that followed. Then I stood, walked to the cabinet, and reached for a worn blue book pushed against the back wall, my old ledger. The cover was frayed at the corners, the pages filled with faded ink. I hadn't opened it in years. Inside were records of every expense I'd once written, with care fabric costs, orders completed, money saved for Leora's tuition. Between the columns, I'd tucked notes to myself, reminders of birthdays, recipes, even one small folded card in her handwriting that said, "Thank you for believing in me." I traced the letters with my thumb. Then, slowly, I turned to a blank page near the back. I uncapped my pen and wrote the date. Under it, one line, April 24th. Perfect night. For everyone but me. The ink spread slightly across the paper, darker than I intended. I left the book open on the table. I didn't know it yet. But I had just started a new record, not of debts or favors, but of truths that could no longer be erased. The ledger lay open on the table. Its spine cracked like an old confession. The ink of the earlier pages had bled into the paper, years of work and care pressed between thin lines. I ran my fingers down the columns, following the neat handwriting that once made me proud of how carefully I'd kept my life in order. Near the middle, the entries began to change. Gone were the notes for sewing supplies and clients. In their place were dates and amounts, each one connected to Leora's name. August 2014, wedding fund, $12,000. May 2016, condo down payment, $25,000. November 2019, emergency repairs, $10,000. January 2021, gift for her business launch, $8,000. The list went on. The final page ended in the present year. I added the numbers in my head and stopped counting when it passed $120,000. Not once had she paid a cent back. The room seemed smaller as I stared at those figures. I could still remember the day she called about the wedding fund. She had said, "Mom, we can't have a proper ceremony without a view. Everyone's booking waterfront venues. It's just how things are now." I had sold my mother's emerald earrings to help her. They were sitting in the box anyway. I'd told myself. Then the condo mom. We found the perfect place. But the down payment deadline's next week. We'll repay you once the commissions start rolling in. I wired the money that same afternoon. I told myself it was for her security, for her happiness. I had spent so many years fixing hems, adjusting seams, and saving every extra dollar just for that reason, to make sure she'd never struggle like I had. But as I looked at the rows of ink, I realized I'd traded one kind of poverty for another. The doorbell rang. I closed the ledger quickly, though no one could have guessed what it contained. When I opened the door, Petra Loom stood there, holding a basket of lemons from her garden. "You look like someone reading bad news," she said, studying my face. "Old memories," I answered. She stepped inside without asking. The kind that bite or the kind that ache? Both. I placed the basket on the counter. I've been keeping track of every time I tried to help Leora. I thought it would make me feel proud. Does it? It makes me feel foolish. Petra's voice softened. Love isn't foolish. Arianel. But giving without measure, that's a kind of blindness. I looked at her hands, rough from gardening, and said quietly, I taught her generosity. Petra. But never boundaries. She didn't answer right away. Instead, she pulled out a lemon, rolled it in her palm, and set it on the counter. Boundaries can be learned, she said, even late in life. After she left, I reopened the ledger. The numbers no longer looked like acts of love. They looked like lessons I had paid for in installments. At the bottom of the page, beneath the last entry, I wrote a new line slowly, deliberately. April 25th, 2024. The cake was the last gift without return. I closed the book and pressed my hand over the cover. The paper was warm from my touch. Somewhere in the distance, I heard the church bells from St. Andrew's ring for evening service. The sound carried through the open window, steady and clear, for the first time. It didn't feel like a call to forgive. It felt like a reminder that forgiveness and surrender were not the same thing. Petra's porch smelled faintly of mint and paint thinner. She was sitting in her old wicker chair when I walked over. A mug of tea balanced on her knee. She looked up, squinting. "You look like someone carrying more than a grocery bag," she said. "I needed air," I answered, though it wasn't quite true. "Air's free," she said, moving her cup aside. "But peace costs honesty." "Sit," I sat. The chair creaked under me, same as it had the first time I came here after Richard's funeral 25 years ago. Petra had been my neighbor even then, sharp-eyed, impossible to lie to. She poured me tea without asking. "So," she said, "it's Leora again. She didn't come for my birthday," I said quietly. "Went to a restaurant instead, posted pictures, called it a perfect night." Petra's brow twitched. "And you baked the cake anyway. I always do. Of course you do." She leaned back, her tone somewhere between pity and warning. "Because mothers are trained to keep baking no matter how many times the table stays empty." I rubbed my thumb along the rim of the mug. I left a note. I said, "Told her the cake was hers, but I wasn't." Petra's mouth curved slightly. "That'll sting. She texted this morning. Said I was being dramatic. She would." Petra took another sip. "Because she's used to you apologizing first." The words landed softly, but true. I hesitated, then said, "I looked through my old ledger last night. Added it up over $120,000. I kept thinking I was helping her start her life, but maybe I was funding the end of mine." Petra didn't blink, and she never paid you back. Not once. She set her mug down with a thud. "Arianel, listen to me. Love without respect is servitude, not family. You're not her bank. You're her mother. If she can't tell the difference, you have to teach her." I stared at the porch railing. "Teach her how?" "By protecting what's still yours," she said. "Your house, your savings, your peace. Have the papers looked at. Make sure her name isn't anywhere it shouldn't be." I felt heat rise to my face. "You think she'd take advantage like that?" Petra met my eyes. "I think people repeat what you let them repeat. Leora learned long ago that you'll hand her anything just to keep her close." The truth stung worse than I expected. "You make it sound like weakness." "It's habit," she said gently. "But habits can break. Start with one small change." I stood, feeling the weight of her gaze follow me down the steps. "You always make things sound simple." "They usually are," she said, hard, but simple. When I reached my own porch, dusk had deepened to gray-blue. The lamp by the door was glowing the way it always did, casting a warm circle on the steps. For years, I'd kept it on Richard's habit first, then mine, so Leora would always see a light waiting for her. I unlocked the door, stepped inside, and set my keys on the table. The cake was gone now. I'd thrown it out before coming over. The empty plate gleamed faintly in the half-dark. I turned toward the front window, where the light still burned through the glass, soft and steady. My hand found the switch. For a long moment, I watched the glow spread across the porch, the same light that had waited through missed calls, late visits, and false promises. Then I flipped it off. The house fell into quiet, clean darkness. By mid-morning, the quiet of the house began to feel heavy, like air before a storm. I opened the cabinet near the hallway and pulled out the old tin box that had followed me since Richard's death. It still smelled faintly of cedar and dust. Inside were the papers that built my lifehouse deed, savings records, will. The deed was the first document I touched. I had forgotten how my name looked written in full Arianel May Pierce. Sole owner. There was no mention of anyone else. I traced the raised seal with my thumb and felt something inside me steady. When Richard died, this house became mine by default. But in the years since Leora married, I had started saying our house whenever she visited. I thought it made her feel secure, part of something lasting. I had never realized how those words might plant a different kind of seed. I dialed Gareth Snow, my cousin who practiced law downtown. We hadn't spoken in months. He answered with his usual careful tone. Aria Nell. What a surprise. Everything all right? I'm not sure. I said, I need to ask about property papers. Tell me what's going on. I just want to confirm that the house is in my name alone. No shared claim, no hidden clause. I'm not planning to sell it. Just want to make sure it's protected. He paused. Do you suspect someone might try to contest it? I hesitated. Let's say I've been too trusting. I can check the county records, he said. If you like, I can file a single ownership affirmation. It's simple enough. Would that make anything change for Leora? Only if she believed she already owned part of it. His voice softened. Is that what you're afraid of? I'm afraid of how she'll feel when she realizes she doesn't. Gareth sighed. Family and property mix like vinegar and milk. You're right to be careful. I'll send over the confirmation form. You'll need to sign it and have it witnessed. Witnessed by whom? Someone you trust completely. I thought of Petra's steady eyes and rough hands. I have someone. When I hung up, the air in the room felt lighter. I sorted through the rest of the paper's bank statements, insurance renewals, an old handwritten will Richard had made when we still believed in long futures. I slipped each document into clear folders, labeled them neatly, and set them aside. That afternoon, I carried the folder next door. Petra was trimming her rose bushes, wearing her wide-brimmed hat. She looked up when she saw the papers. I need a witness. I said, her eyebrows lifted. For a confession or a safeguard? Both, I answered. We sat at her small table on the porch. I showed her the form Gareth had sent and explained what it meant. She read it twice before nodding. You're not locking her out. You're locking your peace in, she said. I used to call it our house. I said quietly, maybe that was the first mistake. No, she said. It was love. Mistakes come when love forgets to protect itself. I signed the paper, and she witnessed it. Her signature small but firm. Then I slid the document into the envelope and sealed it. Keep this, I said, handing her a copy. If anything ever happens to me. She looked at me sharply. Nothing's going to happen. Still, I said, I'd like someone to know where things stand. She placed the envelope under a ceramic dish on the porch table. Then they stand here. I nodded, feeling something uncoil in my chest. The breeze lifted the corner of one page before Petra pressed it flat again. When I walked home, the porch lamp was still off. The house waited in its new silence, not empty, but claimed. I placed the deed back into the tin box and closed the lid. For the first time in decades, I knew exactly what belonged to me. The morning after signing the deed confirmation, I decided to turn off my phone. Not just silence it, power it down completely. The screen went black. And for a moment, so did the noise in my head. For 3 days, I would disappear from the small circle of people who expected me to answer immediately, to fill silence with yes or maybe. I didn't tell Leora. I didn't tell anyone except Petra, who simply said, good. Let them wonder for once. The first day felt strange, like waking in someone else's body. I walked down to the harbor, the same path I used to take with Leora when she was a child. She'd always run ahead, chasing the pelicans. I used to shout after her to slow down, afraid she'd fall. Now there was no one to slow down for. I stopped by the railing and watched the water move against the pilings. Slow and certain. A fisherman nodded at me as he pulled in his line. You look like you lost something, he said. Maybe I did, I answered. Or maybe I'm letting it float. He chuckled softly. not asking for more. The kind of man who understood loss without stories. On my way home, I saw the stray cats that lingered near the docked boats. I had brought a small paper bag of scraps, fish heads, and bread, and scattered them on the pavement. 3 cats appeared, cautious at first, then bold enough to brush against my ankles. One of them, a thin orange one with a torn ear, followed me halfway home. Go on, I told it, but it stayed at a distance, tail flicking. For a second. I envied the animal free, unwanted, yet still choosing where to go. That night, I slept longer than I had in years. No buzzing phone, no restless thoughts about unpaid debts or unspoken apologies. I woke once around midnight and listened to the rain tapping the windows. The sound wasn't lonely. It was company that didn't demand anything. On the second day, I cleaned. Not to pass time, but to strip away reminders. I boxed up the porcelain plates that had waited for Leora's visits and stacked them in the attic. I left only 1 plate and 1 cup on the shelf. Petra stopped by briefly, bringing soup and a new book. Still offline, she asked. I nodded. Not one message, not one call. You don't owe anyone noise, she said. Peace needs room. When she left, I stood by the door for a long time, the quiet pressing gently against me. By the 3rd day, I realized I hadn't cried. I'd expected grief to drown me, but instead it settled beside me like an old companion who had finally stopped arguing. I sat by the window, a cup of tea in hand, and wrote in my ledger, not numbers this time, but words. Day 3. The silence is not empty. It's full of things I forgot to hear. Outside, the orange cat returned, sitting on the step like it had been waiting. I opened the door and let it inside. It wandered the hallway, sniffed the corners, then curled up by the chair. No collar, no sound, just presence. I whispered, "You can stay if you want." It didn't move, but I didn't need it to. When evening came, I stepped out onto the porch. The lamp was still off, the air soft and cool. Somewhere across the street, a family was laughing, a sound that reached me without ache. I closed my eyes and let the stillness settle deeper. Peace didn't ask me to earn it. It just waited for me to stop interrupting. I whispered to the dark. Peace doesn't ask for permission. Bastian was trimming his tie in the mirror when Leora spoke from the kitchen, her voice sharp with irritation. She turned her phone off. Bas? Completely off? Who does that? I left 3 messages. He didn't answer right away. The sound of the coffee maker filled the silence. She probably just needs space. He said finally, "You said she was upset about the birthday thing." Upset? Leora let out a dry laugh. She left a note under a cake like some mystery novel, and now she's pretending to vanish. It's dramatic. Bastian came into the kitchen, sleeves rolled to his elbows. You know, your mom's never done anything like that before. Maybe she's tired, she's 70, not fragile. She does this every few years, gets emotional, guilt trips me, then acts like I'm the villain. He leaned against the counter. That's not fair. Leora shot him a look. Excuse me, he sighed. You're talking about the woman who paid for our wedding, the condo deposit, half the renovations. Because she wanted to, Leora interrupted. She insisted. I didn't twist her arm. Bastian's voice stayed calm but firm. You didn't stop her either. You let her pay for things you knew we couldn't afford. You let her think it was love when it was convenience. Her jaw tightened. That's cruel. It's true. Leora crossed her arms. You're making me sound like I used her. He looked her in the eye. You did. We both did. The words hung between them, heavy and unyielding. She turned away, gripping the counter, gripping the shai. You think I don't love her? I think you love her in theory, he said quietly. But not in practice. Not when it costs you your image. Her voice cracked slightly. You know what it's like with her. She smothers. She doesn't ask. She assumes. I can't breathe without her wanting to be involved. Maybe she wanted to be included, he said. Maybe she just wanted to sit at the table. Leora spun around. You're taking her side, now I'm not taking sides. I'm just remembering who kept us afloat for the first 2 years of our marriage. That was ages ago. It was 3 years ago, he said flatly. She faltered, staring at him. She never complained. She shouldn't have had to. He walked past her and poured himself coffee. You know what bothers me most? We never even thanked her properly. Not once. That's not true, she said, defensive. When he asked, she searched her memory. But all she could think of was her mother's quiet smile when she'd said, Don't worry. I'm glad to help. Bastian watched her struggle. You used your mom like an ATM. Leora. And she finally closed her account. Her eyes flashed. You have no idea what she's like when she's angry. She'll cut me off. Bas. She'll make me feel like nothing. He shook his head. No, she'll make you feel accountable. She swallowed hard, anger rising to drown the sting of truth. I can't believe you're lecturing me about my own mother. You barely talk to yours. He met her gaze evenly. My mother didn't give us a house. Yours did, and you keep calling it ours. Leora stared at him. What are you talking about? I mean the deed. It's in her name. Always has been. That's impossible, she said, voice trembling. She told me once it would be mine someday. He set his cup down. Someday, not today. The color drained from her face. She turned away, pretending to check her phone even though she knew it was useless. Still no messages from her mother. She'll call, she said, more to herself than to him. She always does. Bastian didn't answer. He gathered his jacket and keys, his silence a quiet verdict. When the door shut behind him, Leora stood alone in the kitchen. The hum of the refrigerator filled the space where her confidence used to be. She opened her photo app out of habit. The post from the restaurant gleamed back at her. Perfect night with my favorite person. She stared at it for a long time, then deleted it. The screen went black, reflecting her own face. She whispered under her breath, She's the one acting crazy. But the words didn't sound convincing, even to her. Petra showed up at my door 2 mornings later with a paper bag, and the kind of look that meant she wasn't taking no for an answer. You're coming with me, she said. Where downtown? Dr. Elowyn Park. She's a therapist. I've been seeing her since last year when my son stopped calling. I folded my arms. I don't need therapy. Petra tilted her head. You also said you didn't need a will until you found one written in your husband's handwriting. I sighed. You're relentless. Someone has to be. I let her drive. The office was small, tucked behind a bookstore, quiet and unassuming. Inside, it smelled of lemon tea and paper. A woman about 50 greeted me with a warm but knowing smile. Short silver hair, simple clothes, calm eyes that looked like they'd seen storms before. You must be Arianel, she said. Petra speaks of you like family. I sat on the couch, hands folded tightly in my lap. I didn't agree to this. I muttered, Then you're already doing well, she said. You came despite not agreeing. Her tone disarmed me. We talked lightly for a while, small things, like weather and the neighborhood, but eventually, she leaned forward. Tell me what brought you here. I turned off my phone. I said, And I've never felt so peaceful, but I'm afraid that means something's broken in me. Or something's healing, she said. Why do you think peace feels like loss? The question caught me off guard, because my whole life has been about keeping others comfortable. If no one needs me, what's left? She nodded slowly. Who are you when no one is taking from you? The silence that followed felt heavier than any argument I'd ever had. I didn't know how to answer. For years, my identity had been tied to giving money, time, forgiveness. The idea of being someone without those exchanges felt foreign. I don't know, I said finally. Maybe no one. Then that's where we start, she said softly. By finding out, I felt my throat tighten. What if it's too late? She smiled faintly. Boundaries don't expire with age. They begin when we remember that respect isn't something you demand from others. It's something you practice toward yourself. I nodded. But my eyes blurred. I thought generosity was enough. It is, she said, until it starts erasing you. When I left the office, Petra was waiting in the car with 2 coffees. She glanced at my face and didn't ask what we'd talked about. Instead, she handed me a small notepad. Homework, she said, from me. Not her. No ledgers. No numbers. Write only what you want to keep. That night, I sat at my kitchen table, the same spot where the old blue ledger had rested for years. I pushed it aside and opened Petra's notepad. The first page was blank, and the emptiness felt like possibility. I wrote one line, I am allowed to rest without guilt. Then another, I am more than what I give. The next came slower. Boundaries aren't rejection, they're respect. The words looked shaky, as if my hand wasn't used to writing things that didn't involve loss. I closed the notebook and left it by the lamp. The house was quiet, except for the faint hum of the refrigerator and the soft breathing of the orange cat asleep near the door. For the first time, I didn't feel the urge to reach for my phone or the ledger. I whispered into the dark, not sure to whom. Maybe this is what healing sounds like. But as soon as the words left my mouth, another thought followed. What if healing wasn't real until the person who broke it all knew what they had done? It was nearly 9 when the knock came sharp. Quick. Familiar. I froze halfway through folding the blanket on the couch. The orange cat lifted its head, ears twitching toward the sound. Then came the voice I knew as well as my own heartbeat. Mom, it's me. Please open the door. My pulse surged. For a second, I almost moved. Almost reached for the handle, but another voice cut through the stillness. Petra's. She must have heard the car pull up and cross the yard before I could even stand. She's resting, Petra said. Firm, but polite. Petra? Hi. Leora's tone wavered between charm and command. I just need to talk to her for a minute. Then you can call, Petra replied. I've been calling, Leora snapped. She's ignoring me. Petra didn't flinch. She's resting, she repeated. That includes resting from arguments. Through the thin wood of the door, I could hear Leora's breath hitch. I'm not here to argue. I'm here to make things right. Petra sighed softly. Good intentions don't need midnight visits. Come back when she asks. I pressed my back to the wall, hands trembling. Every muscle screamed to run to that door, to end the tension, to let my daughter's voice fill the hallway again. But Dr. Elowin's question echoed in my mind. Who are you when no one is taking from you? For the first time, I didn't answer by giving. I stayed still, outside. Footsteps shuffled. Petra, you don't understand, Leora said. She's my mother. Petra's voice turned quiet, almost kind. I understand better than you think. I just want to see her face, that's all. Then see her when she's ready to be seen. There was a long silence. I could almost feel Leora's confusion, the disbelief of a daughter who had never once been told no by her mother. Tell her I'm sorry, she said finally, her voice smaller. I'll tell her when she wants to hear it, Petra replied. The sound of retreating heels clicked down the porch steps. Then the car door slammed. Engine started, faded away. I stayed where I was, still as the wall itself, listening to the space she left behind. When Petra finally knocked lightly and called, She's gone, I couldn't speak. She opened the door and peered inside. You did well, she said. I didn't do anything. You didn't open the door, she said simply. That's something. Her words broke something loose inside me, a weight I hadn't known I was carrying. I sat down on the floor, breath shaking, tears sliding soundlessly down my face. Petra knelt beside me, squeezed my hand. It's hard the first time, she whispered. But it gets easier to protect peace once you've heard it this quiet. I nodded, still crying, outside. The porch light remained off, the darkness around it calm, untouched. I had spent most of my life running toward the sound of someone needing me. Now, for the first time, I had stayed still and the world hadn't ended. I set the table with 3 cups instead of 2. Petra sat across from me, quiet but watchful, her hand resting near the folder of documents. My cousin Gareth was on speaker, his calm voice promising to stay on the line in case anything turned legal. The knock came precisely at 4. Leora entered first, her perfume arriving a second before she did. Bastian followed, eyes downcast. "Tea?" I asked. My tone was even, the kind people use when weathering something long expected. "Sure," Leora said shortly. "Though I don't really know what this is about." "You will," I said, setting her cup down gently. She glanced at Petra. "You invited her too." "She's my witness," I replied. "And my friend," Leora exhaled through her nose, forcing a smile. "All right, Mom, whatever this performance is, let's get it over with." I opened the folder. "This isn't a performance. It's clarity." I slid a stack of printed statements toward her. She looked down, scanning the columns, then frowned. "Transfers." "Yes, from me to you. Every one of them." Bastian leaned forward. "Wait, these are the payments for the condo, the car, and the wedding," I added. "And a few emergencies that turned out to be vacations." Leora's eyes snapped up. "You went through my bank history, no?" I said, "I went through mine." Petra didn't speak, but her presence grounded me. Gareth's faint voice hummed through the speaker. "Proceed calmly." "Arianel," I folded my hands. "Leora, I have given you over $120,000 in the past 7 years. That's not generosity anymore. That's dependency." Leora's cheeks flushed. "You're making it sound ugly. You offered. You said you wanted to help." "I did," I said softly, "but helping became hiding. I hid how drained I was. I hid that your calls only came when you needed money. And I hid how lonely I felt waiting for a visit that never came." "That's not fair," she said, voice rising. "I have a life, responsibilities. So did I." I said, "I raised you alone. I built this house alone. I worked until my hands cracked just so you could have that life you're defending now." Bastian cleared his throat. "She's right." Leora turned to him, startled. "Excuse me." He met her glare. "She's right. We've been selfish. I've been selfish. Don't start taking her side." Leora snapped. "You think this is easy? You think I wanted to ask her for help? No one forced you," I said quietly. "You asked because you knew I'd say yes." She froze, jaw tightening. I pushed the ledger across the table, the old one, with its worn blue cover. "Every dollar I ever gave you is written here. I used to think these pages were proof of love. Now I see they're proof of imbalance." Leora stared at the book, but didn't touch it. "I'm not your enemy," I said, my voice steady, "but I'm not your vault either. This ends today." She blinked rapidly, eyes shining. "So what now? You just shut the door. Pretend I'm some stranger who owes you money." "You don't owe me money," I said. "You owe me respect. And you can start by earning it back. Not buying it." Bastian nodded, murmuring, "We will. I will." Leora's chair scraped sharply against the tile as she stood. "You've rehearsed this, haven't you? You and Petra and your lawyer on the phone, what a show. Truth doesn't need rehearsal," Petra said calmly. Leora's lips trembled, but she said nothing more. She grabbed her purse and walked out. The door shut hard enough to rattle the teacups. Bastian stayed a moment longer, eyes wet. "She'll come around," he said quietly. "I hope she comes to herself first." I answered. When he left, The silence pressed deep. The ledger lay open on the table. Pages fluttering in the draft her anger had left behind. Petra reached over and closed it. You did what had to be done. I nodded. But my voice caught when I whispered, then why does it hurt so much I didn't sleep much after they left? The silence felt thicker than usual, as if the house itself were holding its breath. Petra stayed for a while, sitting beside me as I sorted through the documents again, double-checking the numbers I already knew by heart. When she finally went home, I sat at the table alone, the blue ledger open beside a blank notepad. By dawn, I had made my decision. It wasn't about revenge. It was about balance. I turned on the lamp and began to write not in the ledger, but on clean paper. Each word had to be careful, deliberate. The way a seamstress places her final stitches. Leora, I've calculated what I gave you over the years, $124,000. That's not a complaint, it's a fact. I am asking that half be returned, in installments, over 2 years. This isn't about money. It's about accountability. Payment is not punishment, it's participation. It's a way for you to stand beside me again, not above or beneath. I love you. But love without respect corrodes both people. I refuse to let ours keep corroding. A copy of the plan is attached. Gareth will oversee the transfers if you agree, whether you accept it or not. This is my boundary, and it stands. Mom. I read the letter twice before sending it. The air in the room felt still, expectant. I clicked send and sat back, heart pounding. Petra came by later that afternoon with soup. You look like you just mailed a bomb, she said. Something close. I admitted. She smiled faintly, then let it explode in peace. You've done your part. By evening, Gareth called. Bastian reached out. He said, he's agreed to the plan. The first transfer will come through next week. Just him. Yes, he said. I owe her more than money. I closed my eyes. A quiet ache blooming behind my ribs. A week passed. Then another. The first payment arrived $3,000. I saw the name on the transfer, Bastian Kane. No message attached. I didn't touch the money. I moved it into a separate account. One meant for no one but me. Still, the gesture hit deeper than I expected. 2 days later, my phone buzzed with a message from Leora. Mom, I saw the email. I can't believe you did that. You're making me look like a thief. I typed slowly. No. I'm making you look accountable. She didn't reply. Later that evening, Bastian called. His voice was quieter than usual. I'm sorry for what happened at the house, he said. She's struggling. She doesn't want to admit she's hurt. I know, I said. She learned pride from me. He hesitated. She's embarrassed. Arianel, she keeps saying you're punishing her. I'm not. I said, I'm giving her a way back. Whether she walks, it is up to her. He sighed. I'll keep sending the payments, even if she doesn't agree yet. Not for me, I said gently. Do it for yourself. That night, I sat by the window with a cup of tea and reread my letter. My words looked harsher on the screen than they had in my head, but truth often does. The orange cat jumped onto the sill beside me, its fur brushing my arm. Outside, the streetlight flickered a faint, steady pulse against the dark. I thought about all the years I had carried the weight for both of us, calling it love. Maybe it had been love, but love without balance is just exhaustion with pretty language. I closed my laptop, then the ledger, and slid both into the drawer. Some stories didn't need to be rewritten, just finished. 3 days later, I received a short email from Leora. Mom, I don't want your money or your rules. Stop treating me like a child. I'll figure this out my way. I stared at the words for a long time. I didn't reply. Instead, I opened my notepad, the one Petra had given me, and wrote day 12. Pride always arrives before remorse. But maybe, if I stay quiet long enough, It will learn to knock instead of shout. I set the pen down and exhaled slowly. Outside. The wind shifted. Somewhere, a car door closed. The world kept moving steady, unbothered while I sat in my small house, learning that silence could be both shield and mirror. And as the night deepened, one thought lingered, fragile but certain. Remorse can't survive pride, but humility just might. The rain had been falling for hours, drumming against the windshield like a metronome keeping time with her guilt. Leora sat in the driver's seat of her car, parked outside her apartment, engine off, the dashboard light faint against the gray. She hadn't moved in nearly 30 minutes. Her phone lay face up on the console. She kept opening her gallery, scrolling through old photos she hadn't looked at in years. There was one from her prom night, her in a pale lavender dress, smiling too wide, one hand holding the hem where the lace met the satin. Her mother had sewn that dress herself in 2 days. She could still hear the whir of the sewing machine, the smell of pressed fabric and coffee lingering in the air. In the photo, her younger self stood proud, not because of the dress, but because she'd watched her mother create something beautiful out of scraps. Leora swallowed hard and scrolled again. College graduation, moving day, the wedding photos from the waterfront ceremony, in all of them. Her mother's presence hovered just outside the frame, holding a bouquet, adjusting a veil, clapping quietly while everyone else posed. Always near, never centered. She unlocked the glove compartment and pulled out a small handkerchief folded neatly inside a plastic sleeve. It was off-white, embroidered with her initials in green thread, LMP, stitched by her mother's careful hands. A gift for her first job interview 10 years ago. Leora rubbed the fabric between her fingers. The stitches were uneven in places, small imperfections she'd once teased her mother about. "You're losing your touch." "Mom," she had laughed then. Her mother hadn't. The memory twisted in her chest. She exhaled shakily and unlocked her phone again, opening the voice recorder app for a few seconds. The red light blinked without sound. Then she began to speak, her voice low. "Mom, it's Leora." She winced at how strange that sounded, naming herself, as if her mother could forget. I've been thinking about what you said, about respect and boundaries, and how I kept taking without realizing I was emptying you. You were right." Her throat tightened. "I don't know how to fix it. I've spent so long trying to look like someone successful that I forgot the person who made that possible. You gave me everything. I gave you excuses." She paused, wiping her eyes with the back of her hand. "Bastian's been trying to talk to me. He says I should call you. I keep saying I will. But every time I reach for the phone, I freeze. I don't know how to sound sorry without sounding small. You always told me to stand tall, remember? You said pride was free armor. I think mine rusted." A small, broken laugh slipped out, half sob, half release. "I miss you, Mom. I miss the way the house smelled when you baked. I even miss the sound of that awful sewing machine. She stopped herself, her voice cracked. "I saw the repayment plan. I was angry at first. Then I realized it wasn't punishment. You were giving me a way to prove I still had integrity left. You were giving me a chance to grow up." Silence filled the car. The rain eased into a softer rhythm. She whispered, "Thank you." Then she pressed stop. The recording stared back at her from the screen, voice memo 001. She hovered over it, thumb trembling. For a moment, she imagined sending it, her mother sitting at the kitchen table, hearing her voice, hearing the words she'd never had the courage to say in person. Maybe that would be enough. But then the fear crept in, the old reflex of control, the need to appear composed, not contrite, before she could think twice. She tapped delete. The file vanished. Her reflection stared back from the black screen, eyes rimmed red, lips trembling. The car smelled faintly of rain and regret. She folded the handkerchief again, carefully this time, and tucked it back into the glove compartment. Then she started the engine, the hum filling the silence she couldn't bear. As the headlights cut through the wet street, she whispered to herself, "Tomorrow. I'll say it tomorrow." But even she didn't believe it. The morning light came through gentle and even, the kind of brightness that didn't demand anything. I had stopped expecting grand moments of change. Instead, I looked for smaller ones, the kind that felt like slow breathing after too much holding back. Petra convinced me to join the community garden by the old library. "You need dirt under your nails," she said. "It's cheaper than therapy." The first time I went, the coordinator, a woman named Cressida with weathered hands, handed me a trowel and pointed to a bed overrun with weeds. "Pull the ones that come up easy," she said. "The stubborn ones can wait." I knelt in the soil, feeling the ground's cool weight against my palms. The work was steady and quiet. No one asking questions. No one waiting for answers. After a while, Cressida glanced over. "You're new," she said. "Sort of," I replied, trying to see what grows back after you stop watering the wrong things. She smiled faintly. "That's half of gardening." At home, I found an old chair Richard had built decades ago, the back cracked. The paint faded. I dragged it onto the porch and began sanding it down, layer by layer. Each stroke of sandpaper felt like an argument I didn't need to win anymore. When Petra stopped by with lemonade, she watched me work for a moment before saying, "You're building again." "Repairing," I said. "It's different. Maybe not as much as you think." I smiled, though my hands kept moving. "She hasn't called," I said quietly. Petra set her glass down beside me. "Then you haven't either." "I almost did," I admitted. "I wrote something, deleted it." "What did it say?" "I'm sorry if I hurt you," I said, but it felt dishonest. "I'm not sorry for standing up," Petra nodded. "Then you deleted the right words." That night, I sat at my desk and opened my notebook, the one that had replaced the ledger. The pages were filling up with lists of small victories: garden, chair, sunrise, sleep without guilt. At the bottom of the page, I wrote, "Peace isn't loud, it's just steady." The next morning, I walked to the harbor market and bought myself a pair of new walking shoes, white canvas with soft soles. It had been years since I'd spent money on something unnecessary. The clerk, a young woman with a kind face, smiled as I tried them on. "Comfort looks good on you," she said. On my way home, I took the long route by the water. The air smelled of salt and cut grass. For a moment, I felt my age as something earned, not endured. When I got home, I painted the repaired chair a pale teal, the same color as the sea on calm days. I worked slowly, letting the brush glide. The cat stretched under the table, tail flicking lazily. My phone sat nearby, screen dark, no messages, no missed calls. I thought of the apology I had drafted 2 nights ago and deleted the one that began with, "I miss you." I didn't rewrite it. I knew the timing wasn't right. Healing was not a race, it was a rhythm, and mine was just beginning to steady. Later, when the paint had dried, I carried the chair inside and placed it near the window. The teal looked soft in the afternoon light. I sat down carefully, half expecting it to creak, but it held. From the street, I heard the laughter of children walking home from school. It made me smile, something inside me unfurling, fragile but real. Petra called that evening. "You coming to the garden tomorrow?" "Maybe," I said. "I want to see how the chair settles first." She laughed. "You sound like someone who's finally building again." After we hung up, I looked at the chair once more. Solid and familiar. Then I opened the notebook and wrote one last line before bed. "Peace doesn't mean forgetting. It means remembering without breaking." I set the pen down, turned off the lamp, and sat in the quiet glow of the porch light I had finally turned back on, not as a signal for someone else to return, but simply to see my own way forward. Still, as I climbed the stairs, a thought flickered and lingered soft, almost shameful. Was peace still? Peace if a part of me hoped she'd come back. 600 words. Bastian moved his suitcase to the door in silence. The sound of the zipper closing was louder than any argument they'd had all week. "Don't do this," Leora said, voice shaking. "We can talk. We just need time." He looked at her gently. Tiredly. "That's exactly what I'm giving us time. You're walking out. I'm stepping back before we say things we can't undo." He rubbed his forehead, eyes drawn toward the floor. "Leora, every time we talk about your mother, we circle the same wound. It's not healing, it's spreading." She crossed her arms. Defensive. "She turned you against me." He met her gaze. "No, you did that yourself." The words landed sharp and final. She didn't stop him when he picked up the suitcase and left. The door clicked shut like punctuation. The apartment felt cavernous afterward. Her reflection in the dark window stared back at her hair messy, makeup smudged, still wearing the same silk blouse she'd chosen for confidence that morning. She'd spent years curating her life to look effortless. Now everything felt staged under a dying spotlight. Her phone buzzed an alert from her business account. She opened it quickly, expecting comfort from numbers, but the balance was lower than she remembered. Then another email arrived from a client canceling an order. The third this week. She scrolled through her social media feed. Smiling photos, captions about gratitude and living authentically, thousands of likes. None of it felt like her anymore. Her chest tightened. She shut the app and opened her email. Near the bottom of her inbox sat the message she had once sworn she'd never reread: payment plan from Arianelle Pierce. Her thumb hesitated. Then she tapped it open. "Payment is not punishment, it's participation." She read the line aloud, voice barely audible. Participation. The word echoed off the quiet walls. When her mother first sent that letter, she'd seen only accusation. Now, reading it again in the soft flicker of the computer screen, the words sounded different, less like judgment, more like invitation. Her throat burned. "You think this is easy for me?" she whispered at the screen, though she knew her mother couldn't hear. "You think I wanted to need you like that?" Tears slipped down her cheeks before she could stop them. She wiped them roughly with her sleeve, but they kept coming, blurring the text until all she could see was her mother's name glowing faintly at the top of the message. She closed her eyes, remembering the last time they'd spoken face to face, the ledger, the tea, her mother's voice steady and calm. Leora had called it manipulation, but now, stripped of pride, she recognized something else in it: restraint. Her mother hadn't yelled, hadn't begged. She had simply drawn a line and stood behind it. The rain began again outside. Soft and steady, it sounded like the night of the birthday she hadn't attended. She whispered into the room, "I'm sorry, Mom." The words cracked halfway out of her mouth, like something fragile dropped too late to save. Her phone buzzed again, a text from Bastian. "I'll stay at the hotel tonight. Please take care of yourself." She typed okay and stared at it without sending. Then she deleted it, just as she had deleted the voice message weeks before. Instead, she opened the email again and pressed her palm against the screen, as if touching the message could bridge the distance between them. The tears came quietly, this time, without anger. The apartment filled with the sound of her breath, uneven and real. For the first time, she didn't reach for her phone, didn't scroll, didn't hide. She just sat there, letting the quiet dismantle what she had built to look unbreakable. Maybe, she thought, as the rain softened against the glass, failure could teach what success never had the patience to explain. It had been 3 months since I'd last seen her name on my phone. The message came early on a Sunday morning. "Mom, could we have tea, no cameras? No talk of money, just tea." I stared at the words for a long time. the silence in the kitchen pressing close. The tea kettle hissed faintly on the stove. As if answering for me, I typed one word back. Yes. That afternoon, I set the table with the old porcelain cups Richard had given me for our 10th anniversary. Not the fancy set, just 2 plain white cups with tiny cracks near the rims. The kind that felt lived in. When the doorbell rang, my chest tightened. Petra had offered to be nearby in case of emotional emergencies, but I told her no. This had to be quiet. Leora stood on the porch, holding a small envelope in one hand and a paper bag in the other. Her eyes were tired, her smile tentative. "Hi, Mom. Come in," I said softly. She stepped inside, glancing around as if the house might have changed in her absence. It hadn't. Only I brought scones. She said, "Lemon, your favorite." I smiled. They still are. We sat at the table. The first few minutes were filled with careful small talk. The weather, the garden, the chair I had repainted. Her voice trembled slightly when she said, "The color suits you." After a while, the rhythm of tea took over, the clink of cups, the soft pour, the shared quiet. Then she reached into her purse and placed the envelope beside my cup. "It's the first full repayment," she said. 3,000 for this month, 3,000 for next. I wanted to bring it in person. I looked at the envelope but didn't touch it. "Thank you." Her hands twisted in her lap. I thought about sending a transfer again, but I wanted to see you. I nodded. "You didn't need money to do that." "I know." Her voice broke a little. "I just didn't know if I was allowed." I took a breath. "You were always allowed, Leora. You just weren't entitled." She blinked hard, tears gathering, but not falling. I've said those words to myself every night since that day. You're not entitled. I used to think you were being cruel. Now I know you were being clear. I reached across the table and covered her hand with mine. Clarity isn't cruelty. I learned that the hard way too. She let out a small, uneven laugh. I used to blame you for everything that scared me. Responsibility, money, even love. I didn't know how to be close without taking, and I didn't know how to give without losing myself. I said quietly. We sat in that truth for a while. The kind of silence that doesn't demand apology. Finally, she said, "Bastian moved back last week. He's been patient. I'm trying to be better. We both are. I'm glad." I said, "He has a good heart." "So do you," she whispered. "I just didn't know how to see it when it wasn't shining on me." Her words trembled through me. Soft, but steady. I squeezed her hand once, then released it. "We don't need to fix everything today." "I know," she said, "but maybe we can begin again with tea." We drank quietly. The steam from the cups curled upward between us, blurring the lines of years that had felt like walls. When she left, the envelope remained unopened on the table. I watched her car pull away, the sound fading down the street. Then I turned back to the 2 cups, still warm, still full. Some doors don't close, I thought. They just learn to open slower. And I wondered, was forgiveness a door you stepped through, or a window you left open just enough for the light to find its way back in? Spring had come back to Charleston the way it always did. Soft, slow, full of second chances. The harbor smelled faintly of salt and magnolia, and for the first time in years, I didn't dread the date marked on my calendar, my birthday. The house felt alive again. I set a smaller table than before, 4 plates, not 6. The linen cloth was green with faint embroidery. The same one from the night everything broke. It didn't hurt to unfold it now. Petra arrived first, carrying a pot of stew that smelled like rosemary and comfort. "You still cook too little for guests," she said, setting it on the stove. "I learned from the best," I teased. A few minutes later, Dr. Elowin appeared with flowers. Wild ones this time, not arranged or trimmed. They looked happier this way. she said when I thanked her. We laughed softly. The easy kind that settles into the walls and makes them kinder. Then came the sound of a car door closing outside. I didn't have to look. I knew the rhythm of those steps. When Lyora appeared at the door, holding a cake carrier, I saw nerves flicker behind her smile. "Hi, Mom," she said. "Come in," I said gently. She hesitated, then crossed the threshold. Her hair was shorter, her clothes simpler. She placed the cake on the counter, unfastened the lid, and said, "It's your recipe." I didn't change anything. I could see it, the same vanilla sponge, pearl candles, the same swirl of frosting I had once made by memory. Petra whistled softly. Now that's full circle. We ate together, slow and unhurried. Lyora served the cake herself, cutting each slice carefully, passing it first to Petra, then Dr. Elowin, and last to me. The knife trembled slightly in her hand, but her smile didn't fade. When she handed me my plate, she said quietly, "Happy birthday." "Mom," I met her eyes. "Thank you, Lyora." The room filled with the clink of forks, the small hum of conversation. Petra told a story about her son's new baby. Dr. Elowin shared a joke about garden therapy. Lyora listened more than she spoke. But her silence was different now. It wasn't distance, it was care. When the plates were nearly empty, Lyora looked at the lamp by the porch door. "That's new," she said. I smiled. "The brass tag." "Yes. Gareth had it made." She leaned closer to read it aloud. "Built by boundaries, kept by respect." Her eyes glistened faintly. "That's beautiful." "It's true," I said. "That's how this house survived. That's how we did too." Lyora reached into her purse and placed an envelope on the table, her final repayment. "The last of it," she said softly. "But I'd rather you use it for something joyful." I looked at the envelope and then at her. "I already have." She smiled, a real, unguarded one this time. Later, when everyone had gone and the house quieted, I stepped onto the porch. The evening air was cool but kind. The lamp glowed beside me, steady and golden. The brass tag caught the light and shimmered faintly, like it understood its own meaning. Inside, the dishes waited. The air still carried traces of laughter and sugar, and the leftover cake sat on the counter. I blew out the candles one by one, not to end the night, but to make space for another beginning. As the last flame dimmed, I whispered to myself, "Love can return if respect leads the way." And as the harbor wind drifted through the porch, I found myself wondering, not with fear, but with quiet hope. What else might grow from forgiveness once it learns to stand on its own?